It was the winter of 1943 on the Eastern Front, and the cold was relentless. I was a Soviet soldier stationed in a small outpost near Stalingrad. The temperature had dropped well below freezing, and the snow-covered landscape stretched endlessly in every direction. Our uniforms were inadequate for the harsh weather, and the cold seeped into our bones. We had been fighting for months, and the battle seemed endless. The Germans had dug in, fortifying their positions with trenches and bunkers. Our orders were to push them back and reclaim lost ground, but every advance was met with fierce resistance. One morning, as the frost clung to our equipment and the air was filled with the icy sting of wind, we prepared for another push. The sky was a bleak gray, and the snow fell steadily, covering the battlefield with a blanket of white. The silence was eerie, broken only by the distant rumble of artillery and the occasional crack of a rifle. As we moved out, the ground was uneven and treacherous. The snow was thick, making it difficult to march, and we had to be careful not to slip or become stuck. Our officers led us through the white wasteland, navigating the treacherous terrain towards the enemy lines. We reached a line of German trenches, and the fighting began. The noise was deafening. Machine guns rattled, and grenades exploded with fiery bursts. We pressed forward, firing our rifles and hurling grenades into the enemy positions. The cold made our fingers numb, and it was hard to keep a steady aim. The battle was fierce. Every inch of ground was contested, and we had to fight from trench to trench, often at close quarters. The Germans were well prepared and fought back with everything they had. The fighting was chaotic, with men shouting commands and calling for help amid the din of battle. At one point, we managed to breach a German trench. Inside, it was dark and cramped. The walls were lined with makeshift beds and supplies, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke and sweat. We engaged in brutal hand-to-hand combat, and I remember the fear and adrenaline coursing through me as we fought for control. We eventually took the trench, but the victory was short-lived. The Germans counterattacked, and we were forced to fall back. The fighting continued for hours, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The cold was unrelenting, and it felt like every step was a struggle against the frozen ground. As night fell, the temperature dropped even further. We huddled in our positions, trying to keep warm as best we could. The snow continued to fall, and the battlefield was now a ghostly white landscape. We were exhausted and cold, but we knew we had to keep going. Despite the harsh conditions and the intense fighting, there was a sense of camaraderie among us. We shared what little food and drink we had, and we looked out for one another. Each victory, no matter how small, gave us hope that we could eventually push the Germans back and reclaim our land. The battle for Stalingrad was far from over, and there were many more challenges ahead. But that night, as we rested in the frozen trenches, we took solace in the fact that we had held our ground and made progress. The Eastern Front was a place of suffering and hardship, but it was also a place where we found strength and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. As I lay down to sleep, I thought about the men who had fought beside me, the comrades I had lost, and the battle that lay ahead. The war was far from over, and we knew that the fight would continue. But for now, we rested, ready to face another day on the harsh and unforgiving Eastern Front.